The highly anticipated report on the probe into the closure of 7 banks by Bank of Uganda is finally out. Did the closed banks flout regulations deserving of closure, or were there legitimate concerns about how the central bank acted? Also, will this report be brushed aside, as was the case with the report on the presidential handshake? On the Spotlight, we host the chairperson of the parliamentary committee that has been probing Bank of Uganda, the Honorable Abdu Katuntu. Honorable Abdu Katuntu, thank you very much for honoring our invitation on a day like this when you finally handed in the report of your probe. So we are gratified that you made time in a busy schedule to come here. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Let me take you even back before, when COSASE asked the Auditor General to audit, to make that forensic audit of the banks. Almost Tefe Bank was closed maybe 25 years ago, a quarter of a century ago. And then maybe Crane Bank was the last to be closed. One wonders why after almost a quarter of a century, there was no audit of that nature. And what was that stroke that broke the camel's back for you to say, or COSASE to say, or Parliament to say, now we need an audit?
Well, thank you very much, Patrick. I think around 3 or 4 years ago, no, 3, Minister Amelia Chambade, Minister in charge of Trade and Cooperatives, had written to the governor twice, asking about what happened to the cooperative bank, because in the ministry they were considering the idea of reviving a cooperative bank. However, she had not yet got the benefit of a reply from the central bank. So the third letter she wrote, she copied it to me, and I as chairperson of COSASE, yes. Then I got concerned. As I was considering that letter and figuring what to do, because it had been copied actually to the speaker, and the speaker sent it to me as the chairperson in charge of the committee charged with looking after statutory authorities, including Bank of Uganda. A few former shareholders of Greenland Bank expressed concern that their bank was closed many years ago, 2 decades ago, but they have never got a final report. So when we are considering the ordinary audit report of the Auditor General, the statutory ones, we did ask the officers from Bank of Uganda whether indeed they have any report on the closed bank. Unfortunately, they looked to be blank. So it triggered it off. And eventually said, no, I think there's something wrong here. So we started asking questions until we were not satisfied with the answers that were being given. So we asked the Auditor General to move in and do a forensic audit. The rest is now history.
So yes,
here we have a report.
Here we have a report, yes. But before we even get into that report, was that because the Bank of Uganda Central Bank was outside the area where the Auditor General could make an audit?
Maybe.
Before even order a forensic audit?
Maybe. Yeah, you see, the Constitution guarantees Bank of Uganda. Looks like that independence had been vulgarized, that nobody asks what they are doing. Even when we started this process, we got a lot of resistance from Bank of Uganda. They wrote to the Attorney General. Actually, they even complained to His Excellency the President. And the President did write to Parliament saying, no, don't do it, until we explained to the Speaker, and the Speaker explained to the President. And the President listened and said, oh, maybe do it and we see what will happen. So we went ahead. So they did resist it, but that notwithstanding, because the committee knew actually its mandate, it knows the mandate of the Parliament of the Republic, we said we are going to do it. Why at this time? I don't know, because the question I was even asking our partner in all this, the Auditor General, why hadn't you done this before? And he was equally surprised, especially when the first draft came out from his officers. He was like, oh my God, what have we been all along doing?
Okay.
And I'm sure like the entire country became so much
I
surprised.
was asking that, Honorable Abdu Katuntu, because you were venturing into something that had not been done before. The Auditor General was getting into something that had not been done before, and now you're looking at the close of about seven banks. Now, let's get into it. What has it been like?
What can I say? It hasn't been an easy sailing, I can't say. But I think the entire committee, the membership of my committee, flies at high altitude. So we managed to go through the storms. We had all the challenges and so on. But at the same time, we had to do a lot of preparations and to get ready to meet the Bank of Uganda team. I'm sure at the beginning they never expected our preparedness. They never expected it, so it took them unawares. We did our research, we did our homework, but most importantly, the stakeholders were ready to give us the information we needed. They came to our offices, they came to streets, they wrote emails and so on, giving all the information we needed. So it was more from the stakeholders, more from the public, that we got information which we required. Apparently, some of the information we got it from Bank of Uganda itself.
You are dealing with the central bank, but also you're looking into the closure of banks. These are big institutions with authority, with power, that sometimes maybe they could even get into, I imagine they could get into your members of the committee. Did you have it at the back of your mind that I am handling something so explosive that both sides of the group I'm trying to probe have immense reach and power that they can actually try to influence?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. You see, closing a bank is not a small decision. Two, like what we have eventually found out, the issues at hand were very, very serious issues. But politics, we are not like a court. People obey. You know, I have this background, as you know, I'm a trained lawyer with a lot of experience.
Yes, you are.
If, for example, I was a judge, you're not allowed to be lobbied. Politicians are lobbied. And I'm sure everybody with an interest try to lobby. But the most important thing is not to be unduly influenced. And on that note, I took a deliberate decision that these proceedings are going to be open. You remember at the beginning of the process, we had that debate.
But does that take away the element of them, different groups trying to lobby?
No,
you
it doesn't.
And your members?
It doesn't.
So
Absolutely not.
Were you lobbied on your members?
Oh, yes. Yes, I was lobbied. And I'm a member.
Money was dangled to you?
No, lobbying is not about money, but people trying to put their case to you and imagine they are right, somebody is wrong. But in Uganda, you see, everything is vulgarized about money and so on. But, you know, political processes are lobbied. In the US, for example, the Senate and the Congress, you even have what we call professional lobbyists. I'm sure you know about that. Yeah, people come to the members, to the committees, and try to lobby positions. I can't say that even this process there was no lobbying. They were actually lobbying, intense lobbying, giving positions, giving information, and so on. But the only shock absorber we had was one: put this process up there, so that every person, every citizen knows exactly what has happened. There is no meeting that took place off camera. Nothing. So whatever we have produced, the public should be able to judge and say, okay, this is what happened, this is what is in the report. And I'm sure when eventually objective public, of course the public, you have the subjective one. There are those who could be affected by the report. I'm sure they are not happy. So, but the public, the objective public will say, we did a great job. I think so.
You've just said that these were very serious matters you're dealing with. And what do you find as the major highlights that you think you want to tell Ugandans in this probe?
One, that you can close a bank, you negotiate the sale of a bank, and you have no documentation. Incredible. Incredible. How do you sell, you know, because a central bank is like a trustee. These are not their property, but they are statutory managers of this property. The statute has given them power and mandate. How do you sell bank after bank and you have no record? How do you arrive at decisions? Two, when you leave that office, what happens? It is something which is more or less like a movie, because you cannot tell me that you sit in a meeting and you have no minutes. You know your entire record. So tomorrow what happens if you die? Two, when you retire and you have a successor, what happens? Three, how are you going to account eventually at the end of this process without the record? Four, the law requires you to give a final report of liquidation. So what are you going to base it on? Incredible.
So what was the committee basing on some key areas where you needed record and you have nothing on record?
No, we didn't base on anything. We just put it. We can't make any decision either way because the record is missing. You'll find it so much in the report. But we hold the people who are supposed to take that record and keep it responsible. And we imagine the relevant state institutions will take it up from there. Secondly, you can't close a bank and take 10, 15 or so years without a final report. As we talk now, for example, we have monies in the central bank got from sale of the assets of these banks. Those monies are still lying on some accounts in the central bank. They don't have any record. They don't know when they are going to distribute the money and so on. People who are supposed to be what you'd call stakeholders, for example, claimants against those defunct banks, some have died. Some have lost documentation. The ultimate stakeholders are the shareholders of Greenland. For example, when we invited the former shareholders, we did have Tefe. One old man came and said, the majority of my friends have died. I don't know what to do. I don't have any documentation and so on, because you can imagine how many years have passed since Tefe was closed. Go to Greenland Bank, the same story. Many of them have died. What do you do? But it is our duty to sort out the problem.
So on that particular issue of such claimants and people who have died and maybe 15, 20 years have passed on and nothing has happened, how do you provide relief to people like those?
It is not us to provide the relief.
What recommendations do you give for such people?
First of all, we have recommended, and I hope Parliament will accept our recommendation, that we need final liquidation reports on all banks within 12 months. 12 months. After that report has come out, then people may try to see how the process. They can challenge it if they so wish and so on. But I see big problem for the central bank, because if you have a challenge of that process and you have no documentation, how do you defend your case? It's a very difficult position.
Some of the recommendations, Honorable Abdu Katuntu, you make are that individual officers who handle the transactions and all those who flouted regulations be held personally responsible. What exactly do you mean by this?
For their omissions or commissions.
Yes.
Because even if you are talking about what we call criminality, a crime is a commission or an omission. But that's not the point. The point is every civil servant, every public officer has got obligations. And if you have been entrusted with a public office, you've got to perform it in accordance with the law. The standards have been set by the Financial Institutions Act. Of course, originally it was the Financial Institutions Statute. The obligation of each and every officer, what he's supposed to do, at what stage, at what point. The obligation is set by the Financial Institutions Act for the bank itself, the central bank, to come up with procedures, with the guidelines to handle resolution of banks. They have not done that. And a process like this, how can it be a value addition to the central bank? One, it improves, the process should be able to improve the governance at the central bank. Primarily, it should lead, a process like this should lead to legal reforms. It should lead to policy reforms. I'll give you an example. One of the reforms we are suggesting, that there has been laxity in the supervision of the resolution of banker process by the board. However, we find a little bit of a problem because the governor of the bank
Yes.
and the deputy governor of the bank are actually the chairperson and the vice chairperson of the board.
And that's unusual, because it shouldn't be like that.
Sorry?
Because they will have a conflict of interest in both areas.
The chairman of the board is the chief executive. So the board sits to look into the issues which the management is doing, but the board is being chaired by the chief executive. What is that? It might lead to a legal reform because the Constitution provides it so. So processes like this should be able to lead to meaningful legal and policy reforms. For example, the board as it is does not have a subcommittee that oversees banker resolution. It doesn't. We are proposing one for them that you need, because about financial stability, you need a specific board committee that can actually oversee that processes and literally on real-time basis, other than the whole board. Number three, when you look at what has been happening, the Bank of Uganda supervision function is actually, they use it as function, but it is a department. Bank supervision department, which ordinarily does the supervision of commercial banks and other institutions, is the same one that handles liquidation. We are proposing to split that because it has led to a conflict of interest. We are seeing members of that bank supervision function that were involved in supervising these banks to the extent of the banks collapsing, but now they are the ones participating in the liquidation. And it has led to a big conflict of interest. The details are within the committee report, and also if you follow the proceedings.
Are you suggesting that if you are involved in supervision, you can still have an interest in the liquidation?
Oh, yes.
And then you benefit from that?
Yes. And we've
did
seen,
you find any...
Oh, yes, we did. We found some officers...
Some officers benefited from the liquidation?
Yes. We found some officers, for example, that after they had liquidated the banks, they even sold some assets. The one they sold to a company which is now non-existent, but it is still collecting money from people here, called the Seal, but they had sold the assets to a company called Nile River Acquisition. A senior bank officer who was in charge of this process. First of all, he was in supervision. Then he became the agent of the liquidator to liquidate the banks. Then he started again acting for the company that had bought the assets.
Yes.
You know, it's really
how
something very non-transparent and ethical.
Who are in charge of supervision, a year before or 2 years before that, we have seen, especially for the case of Crane Bank, they are giving us those reports that everything is sound. In fact, it's even winning accolades, including the governor of the central bank, also winning awards as one of the best on the continent. And then 1 year or 2 years later, we see problems. How is supervision done? To the extent that somebody is awarded for doing a good job, and 1 year later, we see the bank is getting liquidated.
We have since then realized that problem, and we have made some recommendation. You need to strengthen that department to monitor commercial banks in real time. You need to invest in human resource. You need to invest in technologies and so on. We have made a recommendation about that because I can't understand a bank that has been winning accolades and so on, and just 1 year down the road, it collapses like a pack of cards. Either there is something fundamentally wrong with the supervision department, and therefore should not get involved even at that time. So we have examined that, and we think there is a problem, and we are making suggestions.
But you have discovered that there is something fundamentally wrong with the supervision?
Absolutely. We have. And we are making very serious recommendations. That's why we are saying they should invest in human resource, they should invest in technologies, they should split that Bank of Uganda supervision function. This thing about liquidation or resolution of banks should not be part of banker supervision. It should not. Because the people who have gotten involved in it really, they have eventually, from the evidence that we have eventually had a conflict of interest.
So for the money that is still on the accounts of central bank, maybe after selling these banks, eventually where is that money going to go?
No, the Financial Institutions Act provides for where the money is supposed to go. You are supposed to pay first over the depositors, then you pay for the, what we call the claimants. There is a list there.
Did you also find that money for maybe way back for Tefe Bank from Cooperative Bank is still on accounts in central bank and has not been...
Tefe not, because Tefe there isn't any documentation. So just imagine, Tefe there isn't any documentation. But most importantly, there is no final report. But the law requires them to make a final report. So how are they going to make a report without documentation? You see, handling affairs of a central bank in such a casual, in such an informal way,
we followed this probe. We followed this probe because it was being broadcast live on different channels. But of course, we could not follow it just like the chairperson was you are doing. I wonder what kind of argument will they give when there are no records for such an action that was taken about 20 years ago or 25 years ago. For the case of, what do they say? Or these were different managers. Now you are dealing with different managers. I suppose others have been there for a long time.
Yes. Let me tell you this, the argument they gave, which I'm sure they didn't believe in, but somehow they have to get an answer to the question. They say this matter was so confidential that we didn't even have documents. And they put it in writing, that the matter was so confidential that they could not even afford to have documentation. Can you believe that? I mean, even in Parliament, we handle very, very confidential information, and we put up a very specific committee to handle sensitive issues. What do they call a classified expenditure? It is written, it is documented, but only a few people access it because of the sensitivity of the documentation or the expenditure. It cannot be an excuse anywhere that somebody said this matter is so confidential, I'll not put it on record. Second, the record is a banker record. It's not an individual record. Because if you leave an office and you go with the record, what happens to your success in that office?
Yes, start somewhere. There should be a record.
There is nowhere to begin from. And the process we are doing now, I imagine should not have been done by us. If you had an effective board of directors, are the ones who should be asking these questions. It should have been done long ago. And if it had been done long ago,
with the management.
That's the problem. That's the problem. We are doing a job which ordinarily should not be ours. We should just be saying, oh, did you do it correct? But if you have a very ineffective board, successive boards, then you have this sort of crisis, bank after bank.
So the board is equally culpable in some of these problems?
It is, absolutely. And we pointed it out. We've made a point. Let me, if you were to look, let me tell you what we have recommended. We think this is very, very important. And we said, in terms of the functions of the board, the committee observed that the board did not adequately supervise management in the process of liquidating the financial institutions. And indeed, their failure is exemplified in the fact that up to the time of writing this report, they have never demanded for final reports on the liquidated financial institutions. And we therefore recommend. It is recommended that the board reminds itself of its obligation and mandate under both the Constitution and the Bank of Uganda Act. The appointing authority may, in the event of any failure on the part of the board, in effective supervision of the management of the bank, consider reviewing the appointments.
Those are the recommendations.
One of them.
One of them. But are you saying when the board meets, they don't even have minutes?
No, the board does actually.
They have minutes.
Yeah, the board does. But you see...
And in those meetings, some of these issues were not captured?
They are not there. I was wondering. You see, if you have an executive director, bank supervision, going to the board to make a report, to report to the board.
Yes.
What is the source of that report? the source of the report should be the documents, the minutes.
Yes.
That's where you can derive the information which is going to put in a report to the board. But without the record and the minutes, where were these reports coming from?
Honorable Abdu Katuntu, we are going to take a break and we'll be right back to probe even deeper into this issue. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is Honorable Abdu Katuntu, the chairman of the COSASE committee in Parliament that has been probing Bank of Uganda. You have just given the report to Parliament maybe a few hours ago. And I'm wondering, when watching you probe those gentlemen at the central bank and also the managers of the defunct banks, I wondered maybe you also needed to reach the chief executive of the country, the president, because there could have been some executive decisions that were taken by him or influenced by him, and you needed to hear from him without really hearing from the president appearing before the committee, or you going to him, whatever method you would want to use. Something is missing.
I think we had that debate within the committee. But we realized that the ultimate consumer of this report is actually His Excellency the President. Why? Because under the Constitution, one, of course, is the chief executive, but he also appoints the governor and deputy governor. Secondly, he also appoints the board of directors. And the bank as it is also under Article 161, is independent. The only sort of supervisor of that bank is the president. So he will be the ultimate consumer of this report. We didn't want a situation where the public would view us as having been influenced by our meeting with His Excellency the President.
Yeah, but
so
the same public may say you didn't go deep enough to ask to probe.
No,
you did not include the chief executive,
who
is like the ultimate supervisor.
He is the ultimate consumer of this report. And I'm sure it will be forwarded to him. For example, if you must do a restructuring at that bank, you'll have to involve him. If you must do placements at that bank, you must involve him. So I would rather he consumes the report than him being part and parcel of the probe. Let him look at it from a different lens, and then he'll take his own decision if it is so necessary. There
have been other probes, committee probes, where the committee had to go to the president.
Yes.
So we thought that president was Satan, you could follow suit as well.
No. Actually, I also chaired that one. I'm sure you're talking about the famous handshake. I also chaired that one. I hear some people saying there is no report. What happened? We did a report. We met the president. But the reason why we met the president, because he's the one who had actually given out the money. So we are asking him what basis, what legal regime allowed you to do this and so on. So those situations are different. And he gave us his point of view. So this particular is quite different, because we don't see on record his participation in these decisions. So we had to talk to those whom we can see on record participated in the decision and managed the processes.
Before you started the probe, there are some people who doubted the competence of Parliament, of the committee, and I'm not challenging your intelligence, but I'm trying to tell you the real issues I've had, that perhaps you are a lawyer by training, and some of your committee members have different backgrounds. There was that doubt that maybe this was, with all respect, beyond your pedigree.
Pedigree? Me? I'm not so sure. Anyway, I think
I actually had you. I was having a show here, and you were even forced to call in because somebody said something like that.
Yes.
So
yes.
This is not. I'm not making it up.
I know, and I've heard it. I saw a few people, talking on television shows and so on. But at the end of the day, just put the thing for everybody to see and see whether you are competent or not. People who watch these proceedings from day one to the last, they have their own judgment now. Whether actually we were not up to it, who of us, the Bank of Uganda or us, who was not up to his job? So to me, yes, I am not an accountant, I'm not an economist, I'm not a banker, but I am a lawyer. Number two, in issues like this, you have to prepare. You have to read, you have to consult, and you have to appreciate the real issues. And if you are talking about the law, because we are asking, was there a breach of the law? Then you are in Abdu Katuntu's comfort zone.
Yes.
Comfort zone. There, I'm just sailing. So, whoever thought whoever was thinking we are just ordinary people, I'm sure by the end of the process he saw something different.
There was at the very beginning where some officers really showed an element of impunity and arrogance appearing before you when some question they could not even want to answer and things like that. I wonder whether you moved, as you moved on, they started being malleable.
They did. At the beginning, it was very difficult. And I think they came with a different attitude, like, oh my God, these people don't know what they're doing, and so on. So eventually, when we started asking real questions and we needed the answers, and they didn't have the answers, they checked themselves. You remember when the audit report came out, we forwarded it to them for responses. They brought the first response. After 2 meetings, they withdrew that one. We allowed them, they brought another one, which was a complete departure from the first, because the first was purely stationary. There was nothing useful to answer the queries. After another 3 meetings, they even withdrew the second one. Then they brought a third one. And the third one, the governor told us, this is the final one. They're not now going to withdraw. So they had that attitude. But as the conversations proceeded, they realized they were quite a serious lot. And I'm happy they started taking us seriously. Actually, they did. And I'm also grateful to both the governor and deputy because at some point, when they realized we were serious, they got off time, and all these 3 months they attended from meeting 1 up to the last meeting. And they were calling upon the officers. At the end of the process, before we went for our exit meeting, the governor came up with a statement, actually thanking us for what we had so far done, saying, look here, yes, there are things that he actually himself didn't know, but he was now happy that it has come to light. They will take corrective measures. Others, he said, yes, they had realized also and tried to take some corrective measures. So he made a very, very good statement, and I think they eventually took the process seriously.
I remember when you probing one of the officers, very junior in rank, I think it was security, and I remember the statement when she said, I will not answer any of those questions, and you said you will answer everything. In fact, you said I will not answer anything, and you said you will answer everything. Well, it kept us also on the edge of our chairs as we listened to you. But would you want, you as Abdu Katuntu, that the managers at the central bank, the governor, the deputy, that perhaps they should no longer be in those positions?
That's not for me. It's for the appointing authority. However, will I realize that there was a little bit of laxity in their supervision of the bank, they call it the bank supervision function? Yes, there was. Yes, there was. Was there laxity on part of the board? Yes, there was. Should they take corrective measures? Obviously, they should.
Those observations indicate that there should be almost a total overhaul at the central bank.
I didn't say that. Those are your words.
You are taking me to your legal altar. But
those are your words.
Those should be understood to mean that
I think, to be honest with you, you need some reforms at the central bank. You need some reforms. The way business is done at the central bank. The central bank is not like any other institution. It holds the commercial bank to what they call prudential standards. and I want to hold the central bank by the same standards they hold the commercial banks. I'm holding the central bank to what? Prudential standards. Do they pass that test? Do they pass the prudential standards test? What does this probe reveal?
So you find that probably they have all fallen short of what is
The
expected.
institution has fallen short of what is expected of them. Yes.
So how about the banks that were closed? Did you also find that, yes, indeed, these banks were closed for credible reasons?
Yes, they were. You see, first of all, many of those banks had solvency problems. Number two, there was a little bit of also governance problems in many of them. But that was not our term of reference.
Yes.
Ours was how was this process managed? But because that's where we started. If you look at the audit objective, number one was the management of the process, not before. But there is no way you talk about the management of the process without reflecting
At the background.
At the background. And you could see that most of those banks were problematic banks.
But some of those problems could have been detected by the regulator, the central bank.
Yes, I think so. I think so. You see, in banking, and I have since then read quite a lot about it. It's not very easy to have an issue that all of a sudden brings the bank down. And even if you had that situation, none of the situations in Uganda had that. These problems were progressively getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But most importantly, at some point, the public puts in money. In the Crane Bank, we put in 478 billion. 478 billion is what we put in Crane Bank. We also put in Greenland Bank, and so it's not about a bank collapsing. It's about even resorting to public resources to put in. One issue which we have now been looking at.
How come it was sold at a lesser figure?
Oh, but they did value. The law requires them to value the assets and liabilities. They did not do that. And it's all in the report. And they also concede. The law requires that on taking over an institution, the first thing you do is to appoint an auditor. However, what have they done? They take over a bank, sell it, then a month later, 3 weeks later, they appoint an auditor. Now, how do you appoint an auditor for a bank you've already sold? The assets are no longer yours.
How do you
They have already passed on to the what? To a third party.
But even an audit is supposed to help you reach a figure
on how you renegotiate when you are selling those assets. And you know, this is not
on that particular issue. What is the argument from them?
Let me tell you, sometimes the arguments are not even worth repeating. Sometimes the arguments are not worth repeating. That you sell a bank, all the assets, they have gone to Banka Kamara. Then 3 weeks later, you are saying you are appointing an auditor to go and audit that.
Something that's not yours now.
That, some assets and liabilities which are not yours. It can only happen in Bank of Uganda or in Uganda. It can't happen in any other place.
So did you detect some kind of conflict of interest there? Did somebody maybe personally benefit? Was that?
No,
did the committee try to look into that?
We didn't go further, but what eventually we do recommend that now other agencies, sophisticated agencies, should come in at that point and go further. Yeah, because you see, as a committee of parliament, you can move up to some level, then you hand it over to the relevant agencies of government. And we think at some point they will have to investigate further.
This probe is not done, in other words.
No, it is not apparent. It isn't. It isn't absurd. It is just started, in my view.
Oh my God.
Because government institutions should take it over. at some point, or whether you're talking about police, you're talking about URA, you're talking about Financial Intelligence Authority, talking about IGG, they should take it over and look at some of these issues and bring them to the logical conclusions.
There's some
Parliament
areas where
will never bring it to the
there are some
logical
areas,
conclusion.
a recommendation where you are asking the Inspector General of Police to follow some individuals.
Oh, that is even dangerous. Let me tell you what happened. Bank of Uganda sells the assets of Cooperative Bank, Greenland Bank, and International Bank of Credit. The loan portfolio was worth 132 billion. It was sold for 8 billion. 808 billion to a company called Nile River Acquisition. First of all,
where is this Nile River Acquisition?
It was founded in Mauritius. It was registered in Mauritius. But the people they negotiated with is another American company called Octavian Advisors, PLC, who formed Nile River Acquisition as a special purpose vehicle for purposes of acquiring this portfolio. And they paid that $5-something million, which is around 8.8 at that time, given the exchange rate. This foreign company, they were never registered here. But after buying it, they used some local people here and formed a company called Seal Investment. So that Seal Investment is a local company with local shareholders and directors. It took over. It became an agent of Nile River Acquisition. And for these years, they have been collecting money from the public, those who had loans and their securities were in those three banks, Cooperative, Greenland, and ICB. For years, they are charging interest like they're operating a bank. They are not money lenders. They don't have a banker certificate.
So the series, did they also come to the committee?
Oh, they did. We asked them, where are your agents? Said our agent appointed a gentleman called Kakembo Katende to be their agent here. But Kakembo Katende was the Bank of Uganda consultant who identified the exit strategy and solicited.
So is this an inside job?
That's what we think. Because he eventually even opened up an account at Citibank, and where all these monies have been going, it is operated by a Bank of Uganda consultant. The one who actually handled this particular transaction is now acting for
Bank of Uganda.
No, he's now acting for the other company.
But was a Bank of Uganda consultant.
But was a Bank of Uganda consultant. However, the company Nile Acquisition has since then been deregistered in Mauritius. So you have an agent here called Seal,
representing a company,
a non-existent company, but they have titles here, and they are still collecting money from the public. So
and I think this is the gentleman you talk about in the recommendation that the Inspector General of Police should follow.
The first thing they should do is to go and retrieve the titles, because they are collecting money from the public. They are acting like a bank. They are charging interest between 21 to 25. And we have seen letters from Bank of Uganda signed by officers directing people, go and pay to Seal. Go and pay to Seal. Letters from Bank of Uganda.
There's some individuals who had money in Cooperative Bank, and when the bank went under, they had, I think, put in as security prime property in this town, including around Nakasero here, prime property. A gentleman like Chris Tushabe. I wonder what is going to happen to people like those.
We have suggested the Bank of Uganda to immediately put up a committee to handle those sort of cases. Chris actually appeared before us. Yes, he did. He's written so much. He lost this Emini Pasha Hotel building.
Oh my God.
That was his building. Yes, he lost it. So we have suggested in this committee that Bank of Uganda puts up a committee to resolve this, because there are many cases. On my desk, I have over 300 or 400 of those letters. 300-400. And there is no way we would have opened that thing up. So I think Bank of Uganda should take a keen interest, we have told them, including complaints against their own officers and against liquidation agents. And Muzei Chris is one of them. He actually appeared before the committee formally.
You're saying he lost a building that now trades as Emini Pasha?
Yes. That was his building, Emini Pasha Hotel.
Do you have hope that the recommendations of this bank probe will be acted on?
Do I have hope? I am not hopeless. I always live in hope. I imagine people do their job, but that will not stop me from doing my job. If we are teachers and you teach chemistry and I teach geography and you don't teach your subject well, that will not stop me from teaching my subject. So, yes, do I imagine?
Yeah,
yes,
but
I hope.
If I'm sailing on the boat and water is coming on this side and you're saying that's not my side, we shall think together.
Then we balance the boat. We balance the boat. But you see, the most important thing is for me to do my job as mandated by the law.
You know,
after I've done my job, let Kamara take it up from there. If Kamara does not take it up from there, somebody should ask Kamara the question. Don't ask me why Kamara is not doing this job.
You know, because you have done a probe before.
Yes.
And a commendable job, and you have
yes.
also done recommendations.
Yes.
And I've just been looking at the social media is awash with a lot of comments and saying, look, he did this job and the recommendations were made and nobody acted on them.
First of all,
do you feel a sense of frustration that you can do a good job and nobody, and action is not taken?
Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? I do. You see, after you've done a job like this, you have been bashed, you talk about social media, I know what goes on there because you have admirers and haters. It's all a mix-up and so on. So you think after you've done a job where you've put in all the effort, where you think the country should be proud of you, you want your recommendations to be implemented. And I would really plead that the people charged with implementing these recommendations, once Parliament adopts them, they will do their job.
But there hasn't been a precedent that can give us that kind of hope that they're going to act on them. Because actually, working on implementing some of the recommendations or putting into practice what we write and what we think where this country should go, in most cases, is our biggest, I should call it even Achilles heel.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. You're right. But let me ask you one thing. Do you think Bank of Uganda will be the same after going through what they have gone through? My answer is no. They will never be the same. One or two people from that institution have talked to me, and there's like, they have this joke, I think, there, and like they have a meeting, and the first thing they say, who is going to be our secretary? Where are the minutes? I mean, it's like a joke, but it's like, I don't want to be
held responsible for
caught in a situation like this, to be asked where are the minutes, and I give a very hopeless answer. You see, processes like this, some of the dividends may not be like what you are saying, that you'd say somebody is doing A, B, C, D, and so. As of now, I'm sure there is some improvement in the governance of that institution to some extent. Of course, that does not mean that we don't expect real implementation of the adopted recommendations. I hope this Parliament later on, you know, once you come up with a report, we call it a Treasury Memorandum from government, to report on the progress, which comes after 6 months. They should be able to come and say, yes, this was the report. We have done ABCD on this. We've done ABCD on this.
Honorable Abdu Katuntu, we are going to take a break. When you come back, I'll open the lines, and the numbers are going to be on the screen, so you can call. Please make it precise and concise. Tell us your name and where you're from, and ask your question. Do not make a long statement, because we need as many people as possible to get involved in this discussion. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is Honorable Abdu Katuntu, the chairperson of the Kosase Committee of Parliament that has been probing the Bank of Uganda. I have some of your comments coming in here, and you'll be able also to... Let me first take a caller who's online, because I've been having some people online. Hello? Hello?
NTV.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm just one of the complainants who was in Kosassia. I mean,
It's okay. Tell us your name and what you have to say today, sir.
I am Tushabe Chris Karovga right now in the Fort Portal.
Oh my God. Okay, we just talked about you a short while ago.
Yeah, I want to thank God for the Kosassia and thank Abdu Katuntu and his.
Oh no. Well, unfortunately, we seem to have lost online Mr. Chris Tushabe. That's the gentleman you said
Yes,
lost.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's the gentleman you said lost that building around Nakasero on prime property there. It's unfortunate the line could not allow us to continue hearing from him. He was calling in from Fort Portal. But I've seen a number of people here and are saying they like. I'm happy with Brother Katuntu for playing his role very well by starting on a Kosase, on a case and finishing it. Now the feedback is what we are waiting for from Parliament. But then I urge all Ugandans to emulate what the Kosase committee did, very punctual, and that is a guy called Beckham Jones. Okay, you also. Maybe let me, before I get into that, let me also get you. Somebody called Chomojisha Indi said, been following the Honorable Katuntu ever since he became chairman, and so far he has been doing a good job. These people sweat before Kosase and send some lose their speech. Good job, Honorable Katuntu. And Eli Arenaito says, of course it has already been ignored. Wastage of my taxes. Alere says, when you do a good job, needless to worry about the end result. Either way, the people of Uganda and the history of Uganda will know that Katuntu's committee did a good job for the taxpayers. Patrick Ford said, I think the committee did a good job. Whether the action is taken against Bank of Uganda officials or not, the public now knows that Bank of Uganda is a shell of its former self. Next time they want to close a bank, they'll have to think twice because the public is well aware that Bank of Uganda is full of mafia. James Peter, he says, Patrick, help me ask Katuntu what Ugandans benefited from handshake probe. They even added more expenditure and so on the losses. Thank you. And okay, there's some people who think the frustration is that nothing is going to happen. In fact, I've seen those. Quite a number of people are commending you on this platform that have just...
Yeah, I think so. You know, that frustration I can appreciate. But it goes to the general governance question in this country. But then what do? You have to continue to do the job you are supposed to be doing. Yeah, I mean, you can either just wake up and all of you go back to your homes. I mean, does that make sense? So to me, I think let us do our job, let everybody do his job, and eventually even agencies, even individuals who are not doing their job will eventually do it. Life is a struggle. You know, when they are talking about, for example, the handshake, you see, when we went in, it was only about 6 billion. But we were looking at the wider picture. Why? Because we are saying the next 50 years or so, our economy is going to run on resources from oil and gas. If we start misusing oil resources at the inception, what will happen when the revenues start flowing in? So this was really an eye-opener about the resources in the sector, oil and gas, where the economy is going to rotate for 50, 60 years. So when you're looking at the 6 billion probe, we were telling the lesson to the guys who are going to hand our revenues, don't misuse your money. Because you misuse our money, you'll go through what...
You're sort of insulating our money.
Of course.
Before we even
yes,
start getting it.
That was
just
the
like you are building
purpose.
a culture center in the central bank for people to write minutes now.
Yes, now people, I can assure you, I don't think they'll handle any financial institution the way they handle the past one. Actually, the other day I was in a bank, a commercial bank, where I go to pay fees for my kid, and this manager told me, thanks very much for what you did. I said, why? I said, you don't know how those people have been harassing us. They come here, we've been thinking they are angels. Could they are that sort of thing? And what do you do?
But let me ask, how come that the banks that were having issues mainly are most of them indigenous local bank? And that is serious, because if we don't have indigenous Ugandan banks and they're the ones struggling, then there's a problem.
Well, I think there are two sides to that question. One, let me start with the side which I think is unnecessary. We also very unethical, the way we run businesses. It's not about banks, about our own businesses. How many Ugandans run businesses professionally? There's a problem there. So we need to up our own act as Ugandans. We run successful businesses, whether television stations like this one, whether law firms, whether construction firms, mention it. There are very few Ugandans who do that. So if we want our business to grow and grow, we must have a paradigm shift in our thinking. We must put our act in order. We must put our houses in order. That's number one. The other side of the coin is, if you're having a local person who has come up, we need to support him, because along the way he'll have mistakes and so on, but he has to be supported, because to sustain an economy you need the indigenous people to get involved. You cannot have an economy where you only have foreigners. That's why, for example, in the oil and the gas industry, where I put in so much effort while doing those laws, if you remember very well, we put that local content. Yep. We want to train our people. We want them to participate in the oil and gas industry. And I think we did very well. Many people, I'm sure, they are getting the benefits, without knowing where it came from.
But Honorable Katuntu, also sometimes when it involves colossal sums of money, and you're talking about 30% local content, Ugandans sometimes cannot afford to bring that 30%.
No, it's not about money, you see.
Even if it was skilled.
It's about skill.
Some of these are highly skilled. We're going to the oil, on the oil.
But we are training.
Yes.
Let me tell you, when you look at those agreements being signed, we even charge the investors money to train our locals.
My technical people seem to have worked on the lines now, because I hope we can get them started again. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm Geoffrey.
Yes, Geoffrey, where are you calling from?
Hello. Yes, good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from? I'm Geoffrey calling from Wegere.
Okay, go right ahead.
What's your name and where are you calling from? I'm Geoffrey calling from Wegere. Okay, go right ahead. I am just appreciating what Mr. Abdu Katuntu has done, but as if he's wasting time, because all this is about government. Thank you.
But all that is about government. Okay, our caller there from Boyogere. You know, yes, you get that sense of frustration from people thinking that, well, you mean well, you have done a good job, but, well, we may not see change at all. Recommendation may not be acted upon. That's what you hear. Not people even appreciate that you have done your part, but next step.
Change is coming. Change is coming. I think we don't have to be as pessimistic as that. I know it's very difficult to believe, but we don't have to be. What we have to do is, for example, the parliament to continue putting the executive on their tenterhooks. Say, what have you done? This is what we recommended. What have you done? Good enough, you've got a very assertive speaker of parliament, including the deputy, actually. They can easily try to push the parliamentary agenda. So this implementation is not about individual. Katuntu did this or Kosase did this. It's about that institution as parliament. Once you have a clear-headed leadership, it marshals its troops to make to have the executive accountable, and that I think they will do.
Okay, I just want now to look into because we're coming to the end almost of the show. There are things, there are statements you made about you continuing 2021 into politics, but let me look into the Kosase itself. Your term as chair of Kosase ended on January 13th, but the speaker extended it by more than a month. Do you believe the new team led by Honorable Mubarak Mnyagwa would not carry on and finish the work that you had started?
Why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they? I think they will. I have no doubt in my mind. Two, 60% or maybe 50 of the members have remained. It's only 50 that have left. I'm not so sure of the figures, but there is a significant number of members that have remained on the committee. We've done the work together. So it's just the challenge the new leadership has to make sure that you work together with the members who have been on that committee before. I do wish them well. I did my part. The Honorable Baraka Munyago will come do his part, and the public will be out there to judge, not about comparison, that so and so is better and so on, but you just come, do your role and go. Okay. Yes, it's not a very big deal, and let's see how it goes. I don't think it's a very big deal.
You are a member of the FDC, which allocates these positions.
Yes.
And this incident put the FDC at the loggerheads, I suppose, with the speaker. How better do you think this could have been handled, especially the transition that the speaker said you should continue, but FDC was insisting, no, you should go. It's time up for him.
It wasn't about the speaker, actually. It was more about our contradictions that in Ajanankombi or within our party. As you remember, we had been shuffled before. Even our term ended somewhere in August. It was time to purge some people and bring in some other people, which I don't have any problem with. And
you have used a very strong word on your own party that was time to purge.
Yes, I've used it before, actually. I used it at the time they purged. But it is okay. The politics will handle itself. That's not a problem.
And as you talk as if you're about to disembark FDC, are you?
No, it's not about that. But the politics will sort out itself. And maybe sooner than later, it will.
You also said you're serving as a member of parliament for the last time here. Or maybe you're not going to offer yourself for 2021 to run again. And one wonders, you're one of the winning formula in the opposition. You've done a good job. Why throw in a towel?
No, I don't believe that being a member of parliament is a lifelong career. I don't believe it. At the end of this term, I'll have done 4 terms. 4. I am the only politician from my sub-region of Busoga who has been elected consistently while opposition. Only one. And I think that's good enough.
The gentleman you are jostling with for the seat of your constituency is almost 40 years older than you, but he's still offering himself. He's still down. He comes.
Yes, but that is him. That's not me. Let me tell you about politics, and maybe it's a bigger lesson. There are many people who may not have something to do outside parliament. So when they're in there, they continue serving as long as they can. As long as a colleague has told me a big joke, said, no, me, it's not for me to leave. It's for the people to throw me out. That's what a colleague has told me, that he will stand until they throw him out. But for him to say he's leaving, no, he will not do that. So that is individual choice. But I think after 20 years I've served, actually not 20, I will have served 19, because there is 1 year when I was out of the house. I think I'll have served enough my constituents, the people of Ugweri County, and I want to give them an opportunity to look for another one.
And you'll be out of active politics?
No, that's not true. I'll still be in active politics, of course. But I've got other things to do other than being in active politics.
You are a cabinet in the people's government. You have a position in the people's government, don't you?
Which government is that?
Oh, you're not in the people's government. Okay.
Which government is that?
Dr. Kiza Besigye put up the people's government.
That one, okay.
Let me, my producer tells me, our lines have had a problem, but my producer tells me now we can take 1 or 2 more. Hello? Hello?
Chris, I was the first person to call and I was cut.
Yes, we are genuinely sorry there has been some technical hitch, but now maybe it will work. Please go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'm Chris Tushare Karobge again in Fort Portal. I was grateful that I was grateful that COSASE was set up to look into the fraudulent closure of our banks. And I was given an opportunity to present my grievances.
Yes.
But I have read through the report. I have almost lost hope. I don't see where I'm helped. Is it because I'm going to be handed over to the next? Because I had hoped that Abdu Katuntu did so well. I'm not doubting the other people, of course. But the gear in which you had allowed demand, I had brought everything. There is nothing new that I'm remaining with. So I don't know. I haven't seen the whole report, but what I have seen, I think I'm a bit frustrated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But if you could, Mr. Chris Tushabe, if you are still online. Hello? Okay. I think he's a bit frustrated, like he said. Yes, so I was decided to end with the things that are so personal to you, because if we have seen you do a good job, people are commending you, you've served for 19 years, and now you're also telling Ugandans, look, this is where it all ends, and I have to go into other places. Of course, there are those who are going to feel, okay, no, I think we needed him more because our parliament is better and stronger with people like him.
No, I don't have that mentality. You serve and go, you serve and go. But you see, at the end of the day, it's an individual decision. And the decision I took, I said, well, actually, originally I didn't intend to stay for 4 terms in Parliament. I had intended to stay for at most 3. But eventually, after talking to my team, we had agreed that, okay, let me try to have another one. But I also don't want to suffocate young people who are in the consensus who would like to succeed me. I would be very, very happy if a person younger than me succeeds me, because you need leadership growth. Once you stay at the top, you suffocate that growth.
You know, you're sending a serious message to your colleagues in politics of Uganda.
I won't talk about myself. I don't want to talk about my
you're
colleagues.
Just being a very modest man. You are sending some serious message.
It's not that, but that's me anyway.
You know you are.
That's me anyway. I just want... I can go back and I stand and I win, I can tell you. Because I don't think anybody, if I stood... But, you know, it's like what President Obama said the other day, that he could have gone back for a 3rd term if it were possible, but the Constitution doesn't allow him. To me, my philosophy of politics doesn't allow me to imagine that this is a throne.
Okay. And lastly, after having ruffled feathers, you have tackled very difficult areas, people of influence and power and money. Are you moving in some kind of...
some kind of what?
A battle wagon of sorts. A tank of a vehicle, an armored carrier.
No, at the end of the day, I don't need an armored carrier.
There's no any sense of fear? You don't look behind your shoulders?
No, upstairs.
You just look upstairs?
Yeah.
Honorable Abdu Katuntu.
There's somebody up there.
Honorable Abdu Katuntu, Chairman COSASE, thank you very much for having given us your time. We appreciate your insights on the matter. We look forward to the recommendations being worked upon. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of On the Spot. We've just had the chairperson of the COSASE. He did his report to Parliament today. We'll be looking forward to see what happens. And many of you have said he did a good job, and you are trying to see what the executive will do, what the Parliament will do, so that such issues or problems that are affecting the central bank and maybe our banks do not reoccur. Good night and God bless you.